Gentlemen, welcome to the Brent0331 YouTube channel. In this episode of Infantryman's Guide, we're going to be looking at considerations for a small unit leader terrain model kit. Now, this is going to be based on my experience as a young infantry marine, NCO, and staff NCO, as well as an instructor and participant at the One Shepherd Leadership Institute. Now, what I'm going to show you guys today is just considerations. I'm not telling you have to use these items. These are just something, food for your thought, and if you have better ideas, feel free, obviously, to implement those for your own respective kit. This kit is specifically for the small unit leader. Now, what am I referring to in that? I'm talking about your team leaders, your squad leaders, your patrol leaders, possibly as high as a platoon commander. Somebody that's going to be out there with the Marines, with the soldiers, out there in the field, probably operating at something like a patrol base. Okay, this is not going to be a terrain model kit that is used at the company level, the battalion level, the regimental level, or higher. Okay, these are not these large kits that are used by typically S2 Marines or soldiers to build ginormous freaking terrain models for hire to stand over and take notes on. Okay, this is a small kit used to teach, or not, excuse me, show your guys, give them a visual aid to conduct those operations out in the field. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment. All right, first thing I want to talk about is what do we keep our terrain model kit in? Now, this doesn't have to be overcomplicated, guys. The only real requirement here is that it is able to secure in some fashion so that you don't have the contents of your terrain model kit spilling out all into your gear like your rucksack. I've got 3 different examples here. Could be as easy as just a regular old freezer Ziploc style bag like you see here, okay? Also, thanks to my buddy Renaissance Marine, fellow YouTuber, go ahead and check him out. I've been watching him for years. He's got great stuff on there. He's just old school Marine, served in the 80s, I think even into the early 90s. But he said that all his fellow instructors at the School of Infantry would carry their terrain model kits in Crown Royal bags. So if you got something like this laying around, you could use one of those. Plus it's nice and felty and soft, and probably can be used to, you know, wipe off your ballistic eyewear. Third example I have here is just a water-resistant pouch from the Hidden Woodsman. I'm sure there's plenty of companies out there that make something similar, but this is a decent-sized pouch for a terrain model kit, and you can pull this tight to secure it, and it has cord lock to secure it in place. Okay, so like I said, your contents of your terrain model aren't going to be spilling out into your ruck. That's 3 different examples, 3 different ideas that you guys can utilize to put your terrain model kit in. Alright guys, so before I get into the actual contents of my terrain model kit, I want to talk about a few support items that you're going to need in addition to that to build this terrain model. Now, an e-tool, depending on your tactical situation, an e-tool may or may not be used. Alright, if you're in a patrol base behind enemy lines, like, you're probably not going to want to bust out e-tools and start digging away, okay? So again, depending on your tactical situation will dictate whether you can use an e-tool or not. And e-tools are great in terms of building terrain models because you can build up that terrain to match whatever it is, the environment that you're going to be operating in there, right? So if you have a steep hill or something in your terrain model, that could be annotated with an e-tool to show those guys, give them a better visual reference. Another thing, obviously a compass. You want to orient your terrain model in conjunction with your map to the actual direction that it's going to be facing, okay? So, you know, your north-seeking arrow needs to be annotated on your terrain model and everything else. Some more support stuff that I have. This is just my land nav kit. I've got a bunch of map pens in here, different colors, as well as a Sharpie. That's going to come in play, you guys will see, with the note cards that I'm going to pull out. Okay, so that is the support equipment that I wanted to touch before I actually show you the contents. Now, my terrain model kit, guys, I've used over several semesters at One Shepherd. It's a little bit larger than probably most, and that is because typically when I am in charge at One Shepherd and I'm leading an FTX or a platoon in a situational training exercise, they tend to be pretty larger groups. They're usually about 30 or so students, platoon size almost. When I'm going out there. So I typically have a larger terrain model so that I can encompass more things. So your terrain model is obviously going to be based off of what you are going to be rolling with. All right, it's probably not going to be this big, or it can be this big depending on how many guys you have. All right, so first and foremost, I have a smaller Ziploc bag in here, and this has some white nylon style cordage and this was what I'll use to annotate grid squares. You know, if I'm going to have grid squares on my actual terrain model, and you know everything's roped off, obviously time dictates that. I'll use this just because it has a higher visibility. I also have a couple other pieces of yarn in here. I've got brown. If I can't dig, I can use this brown to annotate the contour lines so that the guys can get a good visual reference of, hey, how steep is this hill? Or at least they're thinking about like, hey, this is a prominent terrain feature that's going to be, you know, pretty significant size. All right, I have blue for, you know, representing water, and red I'll use for, you know, phase lines and things of that nature. Okay, so that's the first thing. I have some, you know, regular 550 cord in there for whatever purposes. Now, next thing I want to show you guys is these are just a bunch of note cards. And on these note cards are things that I've used, and I felt that at the time I was going to reuse them at some point, so I just kept them. And that way I don't have to redo them while I'm in the field. Okay, so I save time. I can devote more time to planning as opposed to having to make new, you know, op terms and graphic cards and stuff like that, all right? And some examples of that would be, you know, I'm constantly training on one shepherd, so I have some, you know, latitude and longitude squares already made out to represent that on my terrain model. Other things that I know I'm gonna probably end up using, checkpoints. Okay, so I got the checkpoints already pre-done. Things like rally points and release points already pre-done. An objective, you know, I got a card made out denoting enemy. Obviously stuff I'm probably gonna reuse. Enemy recon. I've got cards made out already for 3 different fire teams, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie fire teams, ORP, so you guys can see where this is going. This is all stuff that I'm probably going to end up reusing, so I don't want to have to redo it later on down the road. So I just keep those in my terrain model already pre-done. Now, if I wanted to be a little bit more high speed and, you know, make these things a little bit more legit, I could always just take some you know, clear packing tape and go over these, and it'll make them waterproof. Have I had a need to do that? No, because I've kept them in this Ziploc bag over the years and nothing's ever happened to it. Plus it's in my rucksack. But you could laminate these guys if you want to be a little bit more professional and legit, I guess you could say. Okay, so that is an option. I also keep a stack of clear note cards in here in case I need to make new symbols, new cards. That's always ready, and that's where that Sharpie comes into play in my land nav kit, as well as the other colors. Okay, red typically is used to denote enemy. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about in my terrain model kit for a small unit leader is, yes, you know, I do use these cards to represent certain things, but I do not like to use cards for everything. Okay, I think there's a lot of value gained in having a visual aid that the guys can look at. And not to, you know, shit on your average infantryman, but, you know, he spends a lot of time learning his weapon system, learning tactics, and everything else that goes into being a grunt, all right? How much time does he actually spend looking at something like this? Op terms and graphics freaking pub. Look how thick that is, guys. There's a lot of military graphics in here, a lot of symbols to represent different things. There's literally a symbol for freaking everything, okay? Also, in the back of a Write and Rain book, they typically do have a page or two dedicated to your most common symbols. But again, you pull that average, you know, Joe Smuckatelli, Lance Corporal PFC, you know, if you just randomly pick 4 op terms of graphics out of this, how many is he going to get right? All right. So with that being in consideration, based on my experience, I like to use Army men and other things that help facilitate that visual reference for the guys. They don't need to know those op term and graphics to help them. And when you're looking at, like I said, a bunch of cards just laid out, it can be overwhelming. It's a lot better to have, in my opinion, a visual reference such as these. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's pull this out first. So I keep some bunkers in there, all right? These represent, in my terrain models, enemy fortified positions. So, you know, sandbag bunkers, anything the enemy's built up that they're dug in and defending, these represent those fortified positions. The guys get a good visual reference when they see this. They know, hey, that enemy is in place. That's going to be an enemy held defended position. And I think it just really paints that picture very well. Okay, another thing that does that, in my opinion, I keep in my terrain model kit is these barbed wires. Okay, so these barbed wire strands I use to represent enemy wire obstacles. Okay, or any obstacle for that matter that's designed to help slow down your guys. These do an excellent job of helping those guys get that visual reference that's what that is in your terrain model. So that's why I keep that in there. Some other things I keep in here, I do keep 2 flags. So you see these flags, I usually have the blue and the red one, Op 4 and Blue 4, and I denote that as, you know, command and control. Okay, so where do we think the enemy's headquarters is? You know, where's everything being ran from? And both for friendly and enemy, I'll put those on the terrain model to annotate that for the guys. All right, so the bread and butter, right? Army men. Why do I like to use Army men? Well, exactly like I was saying with this other stuff, okay? It's a great visual reference for the guys. And Army men, here's a 35-piece bag Army men. Guys, I bought this at the dollar store for $1. $1, I got 35 guys. And I could buy, you know, a few bags and then get all the guys I want because they have different, you know, poses and weapon systems and stuff like that. Whatever I need to represent my enemy best, I can nitpick from these particular bags to help shape that, all right? But again, the Army men are in different configurations, and I'll have 2 colors, 1 green, 1 tan. I use the tan for the enemy, the green for the good guys. And we have different poses and whatnot, like I said, but this gives a absolute 100% good visual for a guy. Like, who's gonna not understand that means enemy mortars? Okay, so if you know where the enemy mortar position is, that's placed on your terrain model. There's no way they're gonna screw that up, guys. You know that is the enemy mortar position. That's a great reference point for anybody looking at that stuff. Radio operator, okay? Where's their command and control? You have that radio operator there, guys aren't gonna fuck that up. They're gonna know that is where the enemy is at, okay? If you have multiple radio guys, you know, you could use those for LPOPs. Another figure that I like to use for LPOP is this guy, okay? Because there's 2 prone. Where's the other one? There we go. I got 2 different prones right here. So one guy's aimed in and the other guy's just laying flat, right? Like he's hunkered down, okay? I like to use this one as an enemy LPOP, and this one is enemy snipers, all right? If you know if the enemy has a sniper position or something along those lines out there, or they have an area where their designated marksman is, you can use that particular Army man to represent that. Another good figure, this guy, right? He's using an old school super bazooka, but however, this can represent any type of anti-tank or any enemy with an RPG or something along those lines that can represent that. Okay, so if you know those enemy have that anti-armor asset at a certain fighting position, there you go. You place that there, all right? Crew serve machine gun. The enemy's got a crew serve machine gun there. How are they going to jack that up? How are they not going to look at that and know right away that is not an enemy crew serve machine gun position? So, again, guys, like, you know, and what I'll do is I'll supplement, you know, or in addition to the Army men being in place, I'll have, if I have intel on like what enemy unit that is, I'll have a card there that specifies, hey, this is freaking Op 4, 1st Platoon, you know, 3rd Squad are tasked with, you know, defending this side of the ridge. That's what our reconnaissance has told us. They saw the unit patches on the enemy's sleeve, and they, you know, gathered that was that particular enemy unit. So, you know, that would be the stuff that I'm supplementing with the cards. Okay, but that's in a nutshell, guys. That is my terrain model kit, and then I'm just going to pack this up. You know, I'm done. What I want to do is I want to sanitize the area. We don't want to leave anything for the enemy to find. We don't want to let the enemy know what we're up to. Okay, if they happen to stumble upon our terrain model kit. And then, as you notice, I'm putting all this stuff kind of in sequential order, right? So it's kind of all together for the most part when I'm pulling it all out. And there we go. It goes right back in the bag. It's ready to rock and roll. And again, only one terrain model is needed in your patrol, all right? And typically, if I'm the patrol leader, I'm carrying this, all right? All this other stuff like e-tools or other supporting items needed to build a terrain model can be carried by other guys in your unit. But there you go. You know, terrain model ready to go. Great visual reference for the guys. Great way to plan. If you're in a patrol base, you're probably not going to be able to do rehearsals. So you want to make your terrain model as best as possible so that those guys get the best possible understanding of what the mission is at hand. Well, that's it, gentlemen. That completes this episode of Infantryman's Guide over considerations for a terrain model kit for small unit leaders. If you're liking what you're seeing, don't forget to check out my channel and subscribe. I've also got a playlist with all my military-oriented instructional videos that you can find on my channel. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment.